Hello and welcome to this demonstration of the Mastering APA Style Student Workbook, the official interactive guide to learning APA style. In this demo, you'll learn about the purpose of the workbook as well as its main features, including the navigation, modules, learning objectives, and examples of the 12 question types. First, I'll talk about the home page. We'll talk about the workbook and APA style manual bundles as well as units and modules. This is the home page of the Mastering APA Style Student Workbook, which is presented on VitalSource's Acrobatic platform. In this demo, I'll be using the version of the workbook that is bundled with the ebook version of the Concise Guide to APA Style. From this screen, I have full access to both ebooks, and the workbook hints will link directly to the Concise Guide. If you purchase the bundle with the publication manual, you would have the publication manual instead of the Concise Guide. And if you already own a style manual and purchase the workbook only, you would see just the student workbook on this screen. In Acrobatic, a book is called a unit. And when I select the student workbook unit, I see the contents. The chapters of each book are called modules, and the question-based modules in the workbook correspond to the chapters of the Concise Guide. They cover the same content in the same order. The student workbook is flexible in that you can complete the modules in order, or you can pick which modules you want to work on. Instructors can also assign some or all modules for students to complete and see their students' scores. Next, I'll talk about the workbook navigation, including the user profile menu, the left navigation hamburger menu, the search bar, page navigation arrows, and the completion bar. Let's look at how the page is structured. At the top right of the screen is my user profile. In this workbook, I'm a student, so I see links for my profile, my scores, help pages from Acrobatic, and signing in and out. Instructors would have a slightly different set of menu options. They would see the gradebook for their students and their learning dashboard. More information about the learning dashboard is available on the APA Style website. At the top left of the screen, the left navigation hamburger menu opens the table of contents for both books. At the top, there is a search bar that allows you to search the page titles of both books. And arrows in the menu allow you to expand and collapse the contents of each book. You can also navigate in the main part of the screen. First, I'm going to go to the Student Workbook unit, the Getting Started module, and the About the Workbook page. This page describes the purpose of the workbook, which is to help all writers, including students, learn and apply APA style to become better at writing with clarity, precision, and inclusivity. We put student in the title to help show the workbook is for anyone who is a student of APA style, including students, instructors, and copy editors. I also want to highlight our approach to learning APA style, which is to learn by doing. You don't have to memorize the manual. Looking up answers helps you learn, and even APA style experts like me regularly consult their style manual. Within a module, you'll see the completion bar at the top left, which indicates how far into the module I am, not how many questions I've answered, and gives clickable breadcrumbs for navigation. To navigate from page to page, there are navigation arrows. There are navigation arrows at the top right of the page, as well as at the bottom of the page. Here, the organization and accessibility of the workbook page provides information on navigation, content, and accessibility features for users with disabilities. Next, the instructions for each question type page provides descriptions and real examples of the 12 different question types. The questions are fully functional, and completing the questions on the instructions page is a good way to get a feel for the different question types. The workbook questions are not graded. However, if an instructor has adopted the workbook for their course, the instructor will be able to see information about student performance via the learning dashboard. Also, Acrobatic automatically saves your answers as you complete questions, meaning it's easy to complete the workbook at your own pace. The last page of the Getting Started module is the learning objectives of the workbook page, which outlines the learning objectives for the workbook as a whole and for each module. Now let's look at some example content. You'll see examples of 3 different modules, learning objectives, all 12 question types, hints with links to the concise guide, accessible mode, and the Before You Continue activity. First, I'm going to show some questions from the Student Paper Types, Elements, and Format module. This is the introduction page of the Student Paper Types, Elements, and Format module. Every module has an introduction that provides an overview of what you will learn. And every introduction reminds you that one of the best ways to learn APA style is to practice looking up the answers to the questions in the module. Let's start the module. Example questions 1 and 2, true or false and multiple choice. Now we are on the first page of the Student Papers module, which is called Student Papers versus Professional Papers. At the top of the page is the learning objective that applies to the questions on that page. All pages have either 1 or 2 learning objectives, and each page has 5 to 10 questions which build on one another. On this page, my learning objective is recall key principles for using APA style to write student papers. The first question I'll show you is a simple true or false question. True or false? Most guidelines in the APA style manuals apply to both student papers and professional papers. I know that the answer to this question is true, so I'll select true. And I see that I'm right. For most question types, selecting an answer gives you instant feedback. The true or false questions also provide supporting information that builds on the content asked about in the question. Next is a standard multiple choice question. Who sets the formal requirements for the nature and contents of APA-style student papers, including the paper length and required sections? Select the best answer. Let's say I'm not sure of the answer, so I select APA staff. The feedback tells me this answer is wrong and to try again. If I have a second best guess, I can try that instead. I'll pick instructors and again get immediate feedback that that's correct. These questions aren't graded, so I'm not penalized for a wrong answer. However, if instructors adopt this workbook for their class, they can see their students' first attempt accuracy on the learning dashboard, so it's good to always do your best. Example questions 3 and 4, fill in the blank dropdown and multiple choice grid. Next, I'll show you a fill in the blank dropdown question. This fill in the blank dropdown question uses a standard dropdown menu. The question asks, choose the correct term to complete the sentence. The title page of a student paper usually does not include a author note, paper title, or byline, which is the author names. Now, I'm fairly certain that the title page needs to include the paper title and the author names, so the correct answer is author note. And the feedback tells me that I'm correct. Next is a multiple choice grid question, in which I have to choose whether each element is or is not included on an APA-style student title page. Thanks to the previous question, I know the answers for author note, paper title, and author name. The author note is not included, and the other 2 are included. However, let's say I'm unsure about the rest. Rather than guess, I'm going to look up the answer by using the hint. I select the blue question mark icon to show the hint. The hint tells me that the answer to this question is in section 1.5 of the concise guide or section 2.2 of the publication manual. In the workbook, every question has a hint, and every hint indicates the section in both the concise guide and publication manual that contains the answer. You can close the hint if you want by selecting the X at the corner, and you can open it again by selecting the blue question mark again. Now my workbook is bundled with the concise guide, so the concise guide section number is linked. Selecting the link opens the concise guide ebook in a new tab to the page that has the section that I need. Now I need section 1.5, which is down here at the bottom. After reading the section, I know the answers to the question, so I can return to the Workbook tab and complete the question. Example question 5, drag and drop image. Next, I'll show you a drag and drop image question. In this question, I have to label the elements of a student title page by dragging the rectangles to the appropriate blanks on the image. First, I'll label what I know is the paper title, School-Based Yoga Mindfulness Interventions Increase Student Concentration. I know my answer is correct because the rectangle turns green and the feedback below the question says, well done. Next, I'll try to label the instructor name. Here, I know that this answer is wrong because the rectangle turns red and the feedback below the question tells me to try again. I can either drag this rectangle back into the pool or to the correct spot, which is here next to the instructor name, Dr. Brooke Mayerson. This question also has an accessible mode. The accessible mode turns the drag and drop functionality into drop-downs. For example, I'll label the final blank here where it's next to October 3rd, 2021 as the assignment due date. And again, below the question, I see that I'm correct. Example questions 6 and 7, image hotspot and submit and compare. Next, I'll show an image hotspot question. This image hotspot question asks me to identify a line spacing error on the student title page. Because I'm on my computer and I have a cursor, I can also see yellow highlights when I hover over the hotspots. If I answer the question incorrectly, the hotspot gets a red outline and the feedback below the question tells me to try again. When I answer correctly, the hotspot gets a green outline and the feedback confirms that I'm right. This question is also a good example of a two-part question. The second part of this question uses the submit and compare question type. In this question type, you type in your own answer, and then when you're finished, you select submit and compare. So here, I have to identify the title page element that was formatted incorrectly and describe how to correct it. So I'll write in there, delete the extra line after the affiliation. I click Submit and Compare, and I see the explanation that confirms that I'm right. Now let's learn about the Before You Continue activity. This is an example of a Before You Continue activity from the Student Papers module. There is a Before You Continue activity at the end of each of the 9 modules in the student workbook that contain questions. The activity shows all of the learning objectives of the module and asks you to rate on a 5-point scale how well you can do each task. At the end of the activity, there is space to describe in your own words what else you need help with or want to work on. Once I complete the activity and submit my answers, Acrobatic will remember my answers. This allows me to go back and see my self-assessment, and if I'm using the workbook as part of a class, my instructor can see my responses as well, which they can use to guide their lessons. Next, I'll show you 2 example questions from the Works Credited in Text module. Example question 8, multiple select. Here is an example of a multiple select question that asks me to identify 3 cases in which I must credit my sources in order to avoid plagiarism. So I make my choices, and then when I'm finished, I select Check My Answer. The feedback confirms that I'm correct. Example question 9, text input. This text input question from the Works Credited in Text module is a great example of applied learning. The question gives me a reference list entry, and then I have to write the corresponding parenthetical and narrative in-text citations. So to complete this question, I know I need to use the last name of the author and the year to create the parenthetical and narrative citations. For the parenthetical one, I type it in parentheses, and when I click off, I get feedback of whether I'm correct or incorrect. For the narrative citation, I will put only the year in parentheses, and again find out that I'm correct. Now say that you make a common error, like forgetting the comma after the author name in the parenthetical citation. If that happens, the question reminds you about how you should format your answer so that you know that you're doing it correctly. Now, as I proceed, the page shows several iterations of this kind of question. Each one builds on the next, and by the end of the page, I should feel confident in creating standard in-text citations. Last, I'm going to show you 3 example questions from the reference list module. Example question 10, drag and drop table. This drag and drop table question in the reference list module asks me to match the reference list entry element of author, date, title, or source with its purpose, identifying the who, when, what, and where. As with the drag and drop image question, I just drag the rectangles to the appropriate spot in the table. Likewise, this question type also has an accessible mode that turns the drag and drop into drop-downs. There are other neat questions on this page that use real-world examples of sources for you to practice your references. For example, this question uses a YouTube video and asks you to identify the source. And this question uses a journal article and asks you to identify the author, and so on. Example question 11, ordering dropdown. The ordering dropdown question type is great for an important part of APA style, putting reference list entries in the right order. This question presents just the author names because the author names are what you alphabetize by. I'll select the correct number next to each author name and, as usual, receive immediate feedback. Subsequent questions on this page present variations of this kind of practice, building you to being able to put complex author name lists in the correct order. Example question 12, paired choice dropdown. The last question type to cover is called the paired choice dropdown. In this question, I have to choose the reference abbreviation with the correct capitalization from the dropdown. Here, I learned that most reference abbreviations are capitalized, with the exception being lowercase ed for addition. As ever, I have the hint to help me, and I receive immediate feedback to support my learning. This brings us to the end of this demonstration of the Mastering APA Style Student Workbook, the official interactive guide to learning APA Style. For more information about the workbook, please visit the Mastering APA Style Student Workbook page on our APA Style website. We hope that you enjoy the workbook and that it helps you learn and apply APA Style for writing with more clarity, precision, and inclusivity. Thank you for watching.